Hello, this is Ukraine One-on-One, a podcast in which two Ukrainians have a frank conversation. In this episode, we'll talk about Cyrillic alphabet and Ukrainian toponyms, our regional identities, attachments to the places from our childhoods. My name is Dana, and my co-host is Karyna. We invite you to walk in our shoes for the next hour.
You're listening to Co-Station.
Station. That's us. And what we do is talk about why all of us are a little bit more Ukrainian than we thought we were. Yeah, I think the whole thingy with the names, right, being misspelled or mispronounced because they are being transliterated from or transcribed. I don't know what's actually the correct word for that.
Two different things, right?
Yeah.
But we will come back to that later.
Yeah. So transcription from one alphabet to another, right, is what we both are struggling with, and that is taking something that's written in Cyrillic, and Cyrillic is the alphabet by which Ukrainian is functioning. An alternative to that is, for example, taking a Slavic language with a lot of shis and zhis and putting it into Latinized script, which is what happened to Polish language. We've all seen where it ended up being. Everyone goes to Poland and kind of struggles. If you haven't been to Poland, the struggle is lies ahead of you. But so that's why, like, a while ago, we've just kind of adopted this alphabet, and it was bestowed upon us by two monks, allegedly. Whether it was two, whether they were monks.
There was bestowed, or we just accepted it.
There were, yeah, it was a lot of
Allegedly, this is
allegedly.
what happened.
Yeah, but the thing is, it kind of functions for a language.
I mean, that's the thing, right? You don't really care what script you take. You just want the letters to map more or less directly to the sounds.
Exactly.
And that's what happens to Polish, right? Where you have to use multiple letters to transcribe one sound, and that's not really a place you want to be in.
Indeed. So that's why we are happy to have our Cyrillic alphabet, Cyrillic script.
I think it suits our needs very well.
Yeah.
We have a few sounds that are transcribed with multiple letters, and those that I can think of top of my head are dzdza, right? Maybe you would want some kind of what you call it, acute trait, or some umlaut to do multiples of the sound. Like if you want a longer sound, like I know Zaporizhzhia, right? Maybe you don't want to put two zh end to end, especially because Ukrainian goes to great length to avoid consonant repetition, right, or consonant clusters. So this feels a bit odd. But otherwise, I mean, I don't know why it brings me so much joy, but every time I think about yi, I'm like, oh yes, this is delicious. Give me more.
You can quite literally taste it and savor it. But I think like the important idea, right, is to just to continue on dwelling on this topic, is that for anyone who is not able to read Cyrillic, the alternative will be reading Ukrainian names, Ukrainian names of cities, villages. I think it's called Toponyms. The transcriptions of Ukrainian cities appear in the news, and they appear all over. Unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons, not for any right reasons, to the state. So we see indeed names like Zaporizhzhia. We see names like
Kyiv.
Kyiv. Yeah, very importantly, yeah, Kyiv is of course appearing all over. But there are also some of the very almost impossible to pronounce things like Severodonetsk or something like that. And then
I mean, even Kherson is somehow hard, right? Because in Ukrainian, so I think, should you agree with this, right? That we'll try to pronounce names in Ukrainian way, and then, because, I mean, I often catch myself doing this thing where I sort of map the Ukrainian pronunciation onto English language, right? And I try to use the sounds that already exist in the English language. You know what I mean? No, like
a Lviv or
yeah, kind
something.
of, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm just listening carefully.
I'll try to then just stick to Ukrainian pronunciations, and you can figure out how they map to English spellings. But I had a friend from Kherson, and that's how you pronounce it in Ukrainian, Kherson. But then somehow she would say Kherson every time, like with a very plosive K there in the beginning. And when I asked her, "Hey, what's up?" she said, "Well, that's just the way I was taught. I thought that that's the name in English, right?" So there's almost this like outer identity, right? Sort of you try to. I guess that's also what I do, right? When I try to adapt the names to foreign ears so they don't sound as alien, right? So it's a bit easier to understand, okay, like which sounds go into that word. Because I guess the Kherson, the spelling right would be with a K somehow, but I would never pronounce it as Kherson.
Yeah, it is. I think it's just to make sure that folks don't completely ignore the H at the beginning. So that's why K was added in there.
Could be, yeah.
But it's just, I think it's us and Greeks who really have this that is really, well, okay, also a few other languages out there, but there aren't a lot of European languages that have this version of because we then also have the Dutch, and
Yeah.
we all know where that is going. And then we have kind of like this almost mute H, which is like herbs or herbs. That's why there are two different versions of pronunciation for that. But I think it's yeah, we definitely should stick with the Ukrainian version, because also for our audience, it is the chance to learn how to actually pronounce that. So next time they will be looking at the some kind of name of a Ukrainian city, they will be like, okay, now I really know what the correct pronunciation is. And so it is Zaporizhzhia, it is Kharkiv, it is Donetsk, it is not Donetsk, as a lot of
So not Kiev.
not Kiev. But okay, admittedly, it is difficult for our foreign friends to pronounce these things. So obviously, we want you to pronounce these cities' names as much as you want and as much as you can. Please never stop talking about Ukraine, but it's just the chance
Yeah,
to...
don't let this stop you.
Don't let that stop you. I am terrible at pronouncing probably half of the words in all the foreign languages that I speak. So I just kind of live with it. And we want to encourage you to continue reading on Ukraine. And there was a funny story. The other day I was at work, which kind of also inspired me to an extent to talk about this topic. And I approached my colleague, Rick. If you're watching, you're probably not, but still. I approached Rick at work with something related to work, and he just had this news tab open, and then he had Zaporizhzhia open in his Google search, and I was like, "Why are you Googling Zaporizhzhia?" And he goes, "Oh, I just saw that our prime minister went in there, and so for the record, it's like the first week of September 2024." And I said, "Oh, that's really cool," because I actually was born not far from there, and actually now it's a gray zone. It's constantly under shelling, which obviously is not the worst case scenario. But then I kind of showed him on the map where I was from, and then I asked, "Why did you have the urge to Google it?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. Whenever I see something like a name of city, I always kind of want to see where it is in the world." And then I was very delighted to find out that I actually have the exact same habit, right? So when I'm walking past like Five Guys here in Rotterdam, I read the best burger in Chattanooga, and I was like, "Where is Chattanooga? What is Chattanooga?" And I'm
They have
probably
good burgers. Like, is it a good comparison?
obviously, I mean, how many burger places are there in Chattanooga? And I'm probably also mispronouncing that, but it really delighted me that people really want to like point the spot on the map, and not just kind of think about some kind of abstract Zaporizhzhia where some abstract people live, but might also not live. Like, does it really exist? Like, does it exist in this moment in time? I really felt like it was an act of empathy. So that's why I also felt like it was it's one of those small things that will make your Ukrainian colleague happy if you just decide to look up where that little town or a city is. And Zaporizhzhia is not a little town, and in fact it is being shelled nonstop. I mean, it's just awful, really. And it hurts just to also see all these pictures from places that I recognize from my childhood, and realize that, yep, that's been like I've been crossing this bridge across Dnipro many times in my life, and now it's been hit with a missile, and it will never look the same anymore. And it's a very deep, weird and like deeply touching experience to go through it, but also surreal to an extent.
Yeah, and just realizing that the places you like, it's one thing, right, to go through it as an adult because we all do. Like you grew up with some notion of what your city is, right, and it changes and it departs from your memories. But it's a different one when you realize that it's been actually destroyed, right, and there is a force out there that just wants it gone. Because that also feels like an attack on you personally, on your childhood, on your memories, on who you are.
So this is gonna sound weird, but so what are the cities for which you are monitoring missile strikes? I mean, I know we probably monitor everything for everything, but like, is it Kiev? Is it also like other
Yeah, I think
places?
for the moment, I sort of it's mostly where my family is, right? And then there is Kyiv, and yeah, they might be in different parts of town, right? I don't think I've shared this story before. There was a time, I think it was, I want to say, spring 2023. I saw a piece of news, right, that said, man dad's age about 50, right, and it's Holosivo, part of town. And I think it even said Prospect Lobanovskoho. Right, and I know my dad drives there. So I was scared shitless, right? And I was just panicking. I was texting him, calling, like really doing anything I could. Thinking back about it, it didn't really make much sense, did it? But yeah, I remember. I think he called me afterwards. I was like, "Hey, what's up?" Like, "Oh yeah, you're alive." Nothing. It's good.
I know. No, but it's true, right? Um that's just also the ability to follow this to the minute and to geolocate like the exact places where like a missile might have landed or like a drone attack might have happened. That's like a really creepy stuff. I do recall when also well my sister moved to Kharkiv first at some point for her job. I was, I was just so scared. Because Kharkiv, I think at some point last spring 2024, we really thought that it was going to be just leveled, like kind of like what happened to Mariupol. Oh, see, I did that. Oh, terrible. And then I just, like, I think I read in the news that there was gliding bomb or something really nasty, like landed on a like multi-story building, which is actually that's the default architecture for the majority of the Ukrainian cities. It's just multiple stories built on top of one another. 15 and 16 floor buildings, and they just collapse on themselves because
Yeah, they weren't built to withstand.
exactly. And I just read about that, and then I couldn't get a hold of her for like, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. But like I recall like arriving to a work commitment, being completely like in distress, and just muttering something that I'm really sorry that I've been late, but I thought that my sister was dead, and people were just looking at me saying, "Well, relax, this is not going anywhere." So I think this kind of like brings me, or us, very importantly, to the topic where we would like to talk about just the magnitude of destruction that is happening in Ukraine right now, because Ukraine is 600,000 square kilometers, 603,000. Do you remember the remaining
No. I think it's
digits?
603,000. I think it's 240.
We'll just have to rely on our memory. But okay, now I'm.
I think we got it down to 1,000, so it's good.
Yeah. Well, that's 603,000 square kilometers, which is, it's just, think of France, think of Germany. Like if you know anything about European geography, just kind of like look at the size of the country, and it's safe to say that there isn't really a safe place anywhere in Ukraine. So,
if anything, last week we did show that.
Definitely. Maybe you want to elaborate on that? So
yeah.
for posterity.
So a short story is I think it was the biggest attack by I don't know, sort of missile drone. I don't know what else was flying there. that Ukraine experienced just since the beginning of this war. Yeah, I think there are also some stats on how many were taken down. I think about like 90% of all drones were taken down, but then the percentage for missiles and bombs is much smaller, like in the 20s. So there's a lot of explosions, a lot of destruction. And then this happened once on the, well, I guess for me, the weeks are kind of blending, right? Because the one I'm thinking about now was on the 26th, right? And then, yeah, it's still kind of a blur because also last week there was one on the 1st of September. There was some on the 2nd of September too. There were big explosions in Lviv. That was 3-4 days ago.
Yeah, something like I would say third. I think it was. Yeah, it was just multiple, just a sequence of days. I'm actually very interesting once we release this where we are going to be at, because it's just been feeling like a mounting amount of sorrow, because it's just impossible, the destruction that has been inflicted upon Ukraine and just all those lives. And I think it's, yeah, are we gonna cry in this we're probably gonna cry in this podcast, but and I think the most painful part about this is, as you said, it just, okay, maybe it's not the most painful part, but it's inevitable that it starts to blend. So for me personally, I am sometimes thinking about the kind of these wounds inflicted by cities, right? So whenever I'm hearing something about where I'm from, which is Kryvyi Rih, it's just in the middle of the country, but it's also like a large industrial powerhouse of Ukraine that still is operating some of its industry. I am really like, I get so angry, like as if it was like my child that like got hurt, or and I'm just walking around whenever I hear any news about Kryvyi Rih. Of course, first thing I always do is kind of check in with my family, and they're fine. But then I'm just like walking around and like muttering in this rage of like, how dare they touch where I'm from? How dare they, erase memories that I have from the city? And I do know for a fact that a lot of places where I used to go to elementary school or went roller skating, they no longer exist, right? And because they were being destroyed in a missile strike. But I know that for you,
Luhansk is in a different position.
But it's even more painful from where I stand, because you haven't even been able to see it for over a decade.
Yeah, it's a weird mix of feelings, right? Because now and again, there are news that Ukraine hits what you call it, like somewhere where military was stationed, right? So I think like last year there's it made news that they had like a police department that was used to station soldiers, and like you don't want to recognize toponyms and this kind of thing. And then you do, right? And you're like, okay, yeah, I know that. Like, it's on the way to the to the train station, right? Or my grandpa was working not too far from there. And it's painful to imagine your city being occupied to begin with, right? So I think this might sound bad, and I don't know if I'm ready to accept all the blame that comes with it. But Luhansk, to a big extent, feels like a city that's kind of already lost, right? And I don't know how to, like I can't even imagine Luhansk being deoccupied now, right? I mean, I can imagine it sort of literally, right? I can imagine, I don't know, the Russians withdrawing, right? And blah, 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 blah. But yeah, maybe best way to explain it, right? And is in terms of what I was telling you about, right? About the departure of your image from a place, right? From how it is now and how it happens for any adult, right? But sort of in this context, it also gets destroyed. And then for me, Luhansk, did really depart from my image of it, like my memory of it, right, so long ago, because my memories were mostly attached to people, right, and people, businesses, places there, that like the vast majority of people I knew and I cared about, they moved out of Luhansk in 2014, if not like a year later or something like this. I had some who stayed, and we slowly fell out of touch. And then seeing pictures from Luhansk, right, and realizing that it's just not the city I remember. Like, it shares some superficial similarities, but it lands almost in this, what you call it? Valley, Uncanny Valley. Do you know Uncanny Valley? No? So, do a quick aside then. Uncanny Valley is a term for when humans see something that resembles a human, but is not a human, and that induces fear. And the hypothesis is that sort of you have things that are very far from human, right? They're not, you're not scared of them. They're humans, you're not scared of them. But then there's between them the Uncanny Valley.
Oh, that's such a good metaphor.
Right, and then
Yeah.
this is also something similar where you feel like a person that you've met at some point before, but they change so much and you don't recognize them, and you can sort of tell it's the same person because the same height, and then I don't know, there are some features that stayed, but at the same time they aren't, and I don't really know how to deal with that, right? And then when I hear about an explosion or really anything like that happens in Luhansk, I guess it doesn't really map to Luhansk from my childhood or from my teen, like sort of it doesn't map from my memories, because I then realized that it's Luhansk at present day and not Luhansk back then. Yeah, and maybe above all, right, I would just want to go back, right, and marry again my memories and the reality, right, that realize that, hey, this place is real. It's not just a dream, and this all really happened, right? And I remember at some point I was talking with a friend, and I was just, which coincidentally is what I want to talk about today. I was showing her Luhansk and a spot where my grandparents' summer house dacha was, right? And I was just showing her a lake where we would go for a swim in the summer, right? Like nothing related, sort of just pure geography exploration. Hey, you, like, can you point like where the house was, and then how would you go there? And it was so bizarre because I haven't done this in a long while, right? And then it felt like I was regaining a bit of reality again, right? Hey, this is a satellite image, right? It must be real then. Then my memories are real too.
I think it's interesting to zoom in on that experience, right? Because it is in a way very interesting that Google can now provide us with some with some sense of like what that actually looks like right now, and you can look at the image and say, oh, okay, this was taken in early 2023 or something, right? So and I mean, of course, not every city is going to have Google Street View and things like that. We understand for which reasons, but satellite imagery is, I think, in terms of that, is very interesting. Because, for example, where I come from, like near Zaporizhzhia, I moved out of there so long ago. Actually, even people coming from the Zaporizhzhia region itself, they often don't know the like tiny little spot I come from, because it just basically became a ghost town already long before the full-scale invasion broke out. But I was just also on this kind of random exploration. I remember this very well. I was on vacation, actually somewhere very, very far. It was middle of the winter, and it was warm in there, so like it just gives you an impression of just how far it was from even the Netherlands. And then suddenly I had this urge that was almost impossible to fight at that moment in time. So I just kind of had to look like, where am I actually from? Because I moved away when I was 6 or 7, I believe it. I was, yeah, I think I was about to turn 7. My family decided to move back to where they're from, which is Kryvyi Rih. It's just only about a 2-hour drive. Felt like half the world for me, because the move felt long, and I had to leave all my friends behind, which is like it's the age when it feels like a catastrophe for 3 days and then you've made new friends. But at that moment in time, it feels painful. So, and then I thought, why haven't I actually ever looked at this? And this was early 2022. So that's where my husband and I were just kind of like on this relaxed vacation. We were already talking in full swing about how we were going to go to Ukraine that very spring. And I was like, well, shouldn't we just take a car and just drive to where I'm from? So then you also could literally see this
The
middle
military house,
nowhere, where I grew up. So you also get a little bit of my context. And then I just kind of like, I got stuck for like 3 hours straight, just zooming in on the map and say, oh, I think this is where we went to swim, right? And this is like, this is the fields in which we used to like run into, because like, like civilization would end and there would be just fields. Like it's so cool. And now I do realize that at that moment in time, it was like a month before the full scale invasion, and this was never going to happen in the first place. And probably I knew it to a certain extent, but at that moment in time, we were also living in the state of a denial in a way. So yeah, I mean, and for you, I know that it's been like this for a decade, so that's why I think it's must be a very gut-wrenching kind of feeling, and especially what you were mentioning, that you don't just return from an occupation as a city, right? Because people that used to live in there, they're no longer there. But I think it's maybe it's important to talk about the Ukrainian Donbas, and I'm also deliberately against saying Donbas and not Donbas or whatever.
Yeah. So if you come back to what I wanted to cover here, right, is the pitch is roughly that you hear a lot about Ukraine in the context of the war, and it just has so much more than that. And hopefully you learn some of it from other episodes, right? But in this one, I also wanted to talk a bit more about just the geography, and what is Donbass, and what other parts of Ukraine are there. And, there are administrative divisions, but what are the historical regions, and yada, yada, yada. But I think for Donbass, it's relatively simple.
It's in your heart. It's in all of our hearts.
Yes, where is Donbass? Here. At the
Right.
Ukrainian meme. So if someone ever asks you where Ukraine is, you just go here, and then they'll understand. But Donbas stands for Donetsky.
Bassine.
Yeah. I thought there in the middle you would also put Вугільно bassin.
Yeah, I would expect so that there would be probably some reference to the things you can mine in there, which is mostly.
Yeah, but it dropped out from the.
Yeah. Well, I can only speak about Kривбас, which
this is also an important one.
Yeah, which is залізорудний, which is iron ore, right? What you are basically making steel from. I would probably also think it's steel, right? And you also have coal mines, but also a lot of iron ore mines, because that's where kind of the context of Azovstal and Mariupol as a.
Though I think there the ore wasn't produced on-prem or like something like that, but there was rather moved there. But
yeah, probably we rolled it into in there.
It's an interesting toponym, right? Because in a way it doesn't capture the human parts of the region, right? And it just talks about the resources, which I'm sure is a bit ironic, right? Because when people use it, they don't usually mean, hey, this is a source of coal, right, or whatever. They have like emotional attachment to it, and that comes from just cities, right? And the image of Donbas is usually sort of this industrial towns that are spread around, and then you have the steppe or plains in between, and you would have also this artificial hills, mountains, Tarakone. Yeah, I think that's the sort of the first association you would have with Donbas as a word. And that, I suppose, would include Donetsk region, right? Luhansk region, perhaps some of the Zaporizhzhia.
No,
No?
I don't
Okay.
think so. I think it's, but that's also the part that's perhaps interesting to, yeah, because my nah is obviously like it doesn't have any um, proof points behind it. But I think, could it be even that the administrative borders of Luhansk and Donetsk oblast or region, was it also predetermined by how
Interesting. Were they following the...
yeah, so were those lines on the map also following the lines? Because as for example, how where the city I grew up in, so I kind of say I'm from there. So Kryvyi Rih is totally determined by the map of mines and all well iron ore processing facilities. So the city goes like, no, and then you're just like, well, this does not make any sense. Like, what kind of urban planning is this? And it's just, wherever there was a certain amount of iron ore discovered, there would be like a little settlement appearing around it. Then because of course
Do you know where the name comes from? Because sort of...
Kryvyi Rih?
yeah.
Yeah. So do you know the legend? So or should I?
So I mean, my hypothesis has always been that because of the funny shape, it kind of reminds you of a horn, right? And that's why it's...
Yeah, no, well, I think there are a few versions, right? The most, kind of like the most common one is the fact that it's two rivers that are kind of joining each other, and that is Inhulets and Saxahany. And both are very interesting names because I think Inhulets also has like a Turkic origin, and Saxahany, I can't even imagine like where that came from. But to us, it just seems like the most normal thing ever. So and we have a little anthem. So do you, by the way, and I also know it. Luhanshina? Do you know it? The anthem of the Luhansk region?
No.
Oh,
Mm.
I'll sing it at the end.
Okay.
So wait for it.
Oh, the anthem. Okay.
The anthem.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, you know it.
Yes. No,
Shall we-
so, no, I don't, but I am looking forward to you singing it because you've been promising me so long.
And I've never done it.
No.
Okay. Vita, if you're watching this, that's my distant
you're
friend
teaching
from Luhansk who taught me this. But so Kryvyi Rih also has a little anthem, which is weird because our cities have anthems, and Kiev also has an anthem. And so in that one, we are mentioning these two rivers that are joining together, and they are kind of making a shape of a horn. And Kryvyi Rih translates from Ukrainian into English as something like a crooked horn or something like that, or like there are a few other versions. I won't bore you with this, but it's just, yeah, it did end up making like a very bizarre city. And we have some parts of it that are so distant from one another that it takes 2 hours by car to go from one part, like from the northmost point to the southmost. And it's just wild. You just refer to the northern part of the city as a place that you never, ever go to. But it's administered by the same municipality and things like that. So it's really crazy. Like I'm not jealous of whoever has to like do anything for the city services, especially now. But yeah, cool. So like that's the story behind like how that city took shape. I was just wondering like if you know anything about the Luhansk and Donetsk.
No, not as much, unfortunately. I think Luhansk originated as a Cossack settlement, or at least that's also a legend.
Has it always been called this way? Do you know?
That's a good one. So I know the previous name, which is after Soviet General Voroshilov.
Yeah, we're not gonna mention that one. The only good thing about it is that there's also
A book. Yes.
a very good book.
I think it's also translated. It's by Zaporizhzhia, and the name is Voroshilovgrad. Yeah, I think it's one of his earlier. It's not the earliest, but the earlier novels, and it's interesting. But before that, I'm afraid I don't really. So I know, for example, that a lot of the settlements there were initially by Cossacks, right? And sort of the whole movement of Cossacks to Kuban, right? That also encompassed some of the Luhansk region. But yeah, not much more than that. There are also some settlements where there were by Germans, right? And I think also some Jewish settlements. And
what were Germans' business? in the Ukrainian
yeah,
steppe.
I think that one would be during Catherine II's rule. And I mean, the Russians have been historically very fond of Germans, go figure. The emperors were encouraging Jews, in particular, to move and to develop the region. I would imagine there would be also some tax breaks and whatnot, right? And I think for Jewish population, the story is that there was this kind of rolling ban on Jews, right, throughout Europe. And when Jews were facing pressure in Poland, then a lot of them moved to Russian Empire, right? And Russian Empire also didn't want them in places that were too nice, so they kept being pushed to the east, right? And they were like, "Okay, you can settle here."
Yeah, actually, I might be wrong on that one, but I think the line that has been kind of drawn for the Jewish population of the Russian Empire was kind of coinciding with the waters of the modern day Ukraine, because well, I'll not argue that like Ukraine is a much more hospitable environment for the Jewish people. There, I would hope it is than Russia, for example, where like anti-Semitism is very widespread. But I do know that historically Ukraine was actually one of the indeed like areas, or like the territory of modern day Ukraine where there would be, well, let's put it this way, probably less persecution than elsewhere in Europe and in Russian Empire. So I know that's why also the proportion is like much higher, and
Yeah. So,
which is great, by the way,
it's part
because
of the sort of the same story that I was trying to tell. My impression was that it's not only within within the bounds of modern day Ukraine, right, but also it's actually parts of it, right? So, for example, you have Dnipro now, right, and there's a lot of like a big Jewish community there. But also there are other minorities, right? You have I think a Greek minority, or there was a Greek minority also in Mariupol, and they just on the coast there.
actually the fun fact about Mariupol is that it's one of the few Hellenic toponyms. It's not actually fake, right? Because Catherine the Great, one of the things that she was doing, one of the Russian empresses that was like especially like aggressive in terms of this these wars of conquest and just dreaming of conquering you know, reconquering Constantinople and making it Orthodox and things like that. So she was wild in terms of course acquiring new territories, and one of the things she did was going into, well, not literally going into eastern Ukraine and southern Ukraine, but just kind of looking at the map and saying, okay, what is this town? And there would be some kind of, you know, ancient Ukrainian name which existed forever, and she would say, well, now it's Kherson. And for those who don't know, but probably most of you do, Khersonissos is totally mispronouncing it, but it's like it's well, there's Chersones and there's Khersonissos in Greece, which is basically like a Greek name for a newly conquered territory. So same goes for Melitopol. Melitopol did not used to sound like that, right? It didn't used to be called Melitopol. They, as in the Russians, the Russian imperialism calls these places with these very Hellenic sounding names because, well, it was Europe of the I'm very bad at history, but I think mid 19th century, everyone was obsessed with the ancient Rome, ancient Greece. Everyone was looking back at these times as like good old times of like imperial conquest when nothing was standing in your way, and therefore everyone tried to make a claim to this heritage, right? And then all these really, like, I was always wondering, like, why is it Melitopol? And you know, it doesn't sound like an ancient Greek settlement, because there are asterisk ancient Greek settlements that did bear the name up until today, such as Chersones in Ukraine. So that one is the original name. But Melitopol, Kherson, used to be called something completely different. And so that was also part of the imperial conquest of Catherine the Great, who just kind of went into southern Ukraine and said, whatever existed here before is fake, is not real. This has never been here, or actually there was nothing here before, which is why she also started referring to the region as the New Russia, Novorossiya. And that's basically how the historical memory was erased. Mariupol, on the other hand, sorry, I took a very long detour, but Mariupol, on the other hand, is a a town founded by the Greeks. I don't remember the context. I do not think it was happy context again. And this is basically what we refer to as Misto Marie. It's the city polis named after Maria. So that's a very important thing to recognize. Also the symbolic sense, right? It like almost gives me goosebumps because this was one of those actual real things that Russians ruined in the name of, again, their imaginary thing of their imperial wars of conquest, which makes me really so freaking angry and sad.
I mean, I think the process of rethinking the names, right, and trying to reclaim the cities had started in Ukraine, and there is, I think, a lot of it falls under decommunization, but also it goes for sort of each town, right, is effectively presented with the opportunity to change the name to something that it was historically, right, or they're welcome to also make up a new one, whatever they feel comfortable with. So I'm glad to see that the process started, right, but also there is a lot to go through, and now and again, of course, there are conflicts, right, where people who live in this small town, they're like, no, we don't really care about this empire, whatever, but just give us our old name back. Which, I mean, it's a very valid thought, right? Like when someone comes to you and tells you, hey, the name was wrong, the first reaction is, fuck off, it's my name, right? I'm going to stick with it. But it also shows that Ukraine could reach its own citizens better, right? And it could explain better why we're doing this and what are we trying to achieve with this.
Do you have like a favorite transformation from like the old name to the new one? 'Cause I have so many, that's why I asked that question, so you would ask me back.
Well, I think the one that is closest to me is Kirovohrad to, oh yes.
I'm so happy about that. That's why
Kropyvnytsky.
we are literally sharing the
My grandma is from there, and we would visit. I think like during my life, I've been there like 5 times, maybe 10 times. And I really like the name Kropyvnytsky. And I really don't like the name Kirovohrad. So it's again one of the. I think Kirov would be another. I'm not sure whether a general, but
some kind of Soviet criminal that probably contributed to many millions deaths. You know,
yeah. So
wild. Yeah.
Kropyvnytsky has a much nicer ring to it. But what about you? What's your favorite?
Well, after Kropyvnytsky, my second favorite is, I think, Horishny Plavny.
Oh yes.
But I actually this worked so well on me that I don't even remember the original name. I just know it's something on the it's a town on the Dnipro River.
I mean, but chances are there's also some nondescript Soviet name like Pershotravnevsk or
where our nukes used to be, by the way. So everyone knows that my life's goal is to tell the world about our nukes that have been, destroyed by the Westerners.
Or another Soviet war criminal that had to be glorified.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right, that even Soviet, so if we're talking about names, and I think this is maybe an interesting one for our listeners, is that even Soviets censored themselves after, for example, Stalin died. Probably a lot of you have heard, if you took any slightest interest in the history of the World War II, you know about the battle for Stalingrad. It's no longer in maps, and not even in Russia, right? Because even in Russia, they're trying to forget this guy who is called Stalin until they don't.
They were trying to.
They were trying until they, gave up trying, and now they're trying to raise his damned bones out of death and resurrect that, that criminal. But it's a very interesting thing that even he had to be banned from, Stalingrad, and I think there are so many other toponyms that have been, again, don't know if I pronounced that correct, but they've been just erased, right? And Leningrad, that a lot of people probably heard about, also just disappeared from the maps to become something else again, right? So that's like
that would be St. Petersburg.
Correct. Yeah. Unfortunately, I still remember that, but I'm sure
it still exists.
Unfortunately, it still exists. For how long? The question. So it's I think it's changes in names is an important one, but also changes in like the just where cities like Luhansk and Donetsk ended up falling into. I really wanted to talk about also curious cases of things like New York on the Ukrainian map. Unfortunately, also recently, as of recent, occupied by the Russians.
Yeah, I think I was talking with someone and there was a jazz festival happening there, which, jazz festival in New York just has such a nice ring to it. And this is perhaps one of the things that I regret the most is I've never visited. Just to say that you've been there. And to me, right, this is perhaps the New York that you should visit.
Oh, absolutely. I hope I will never go into the actual, human human well, like a human, what is it then, anthill of the actual New York, which is what, like 10 million people big or even bigger. But I think that's the curious part about that is not like we were not just like jealous of the West, and that's why we gave this like town a funky name. Like, I will encourage you all of our listeners to just like go ahead and check out the Ukrainian New York and just like give it some thought, and that one you will definitely be able to pronounce and talk about. So please do check out his story. As we probably should conclude this somewhere. Like I before we started with the official recording, I did mention that I wish I had traveled more in Ukraine. You mentioned that you traveled a bit. That's relative.
Yeah, that's thanks to my mom's initiative and my dad's willingness to drive us. So
what are some of the places you've been to?
Plenty actually, right? So I think the ones that I remember the most would be perhaps Nizhyn, right? I think somehow the one that also is very stuck with me is Subotiv. If you've seen the 5 hryvnia banknote, then the church there is from Subotiv.
Yes, the beloved hamlet of Mr. Khmelnytsky.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
When you put me on a spot like that, right? I'm like, oh no, should I start listing all of them? Like, do I?
Yeah, no, but maybe you can list some of the unexpected, right? Because I don't, like, our listeners probably will have different images of Ukraine coming up. Most of them probably will be of like either cities like that unfortunately have been hit, and like probably some ruins and piles of rubble, or they will be thinking about the east, like the plains of the Donbas steppe, and what I would like to maybe touch upon is the fact that we also have like really picturesque mountains. They're not like very high mountains. I don't know if you've ever managed to go to the Carpathians.
Yeah. So my grandpa is from Borshio, which is Ternopil region, right? It's not Carpathians just yet, but you can sort of see some hills, right? And it kind of starts there. So
it's definitely more hilly than the Netherlands.
True, yeah, very much so. I think there were a few trips when my grandpa would take me and I think sometimes it'd be just me and his son and perhaps one other grandson of his, and we would go for like long hikes. Remembering them, right, is on one hand, things are extremely beautiful, but also you would be under my grandpa's dietary restrictions.
Oh, was there anything traumatic related to Salo?
Yes.
I know something. I remembered it. Yeah.
I remember. I think it was at least a few days like that, where our diet for the day would consist of milk, salo, and bread. And this is this is such an unholy trinity, and you would eat it all together. Just so bad.
Sounds like a blessing for a child's sensitive stomach, right? It's just like
I was conscious of consuming animals from relatively early on, so there's also like an added.
But salo is not an animal. It's just it's the nectar of gods.
Sure,
that's what it's.
Yeah, and so that would be during the day, right? And in the evening, we would also get brindza, which is I think it's sheep cheese. Is that right?
Pickled to an extent, I think. The Slovaks out there will know what we're talking about because they also have brinza. But I think it can be from different animals. It's just that it
I
has to
think
be
that one
pickled.
would be sheep. Yeah.
Whatever you say. Okay.
And also like very salty, very fatty. And
Okay, is that
after
still a traumatic memory?
yeah,
Because you're
well,
starting to talk about it with like so much, I'm almost
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. So I mean, the only good thing from that evening I remember is I was reading Three Musketeers. I remember trying to bury myself in that book just to forget dinner.
whoa, okay, I mean, we've all been there, right? Like Ukrainian grandparents are a whole different type of people who will try to force feed you things that they consider nutritious, and often it will be some kind of unholy trinity of like bread, butter, honey. Yeah, but it's like
I would die for honey, but no, we couldn't have honey.
it's like, Grandpa, I want some honey. We have honey at home. The honey at home is salo. That sounds very Ukrainian. But hey, it sounds like really warm, like childhood memories.
Yeah, so I do love my grandpa, and despite the scars that I carried out of that trip, I still appreciate it, and they were good walks. So there was that range. I think that's again thanks to my mom. She has a soft spot for Jewish cemeteries, just because they're older, right?
And they have this all over them. I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is actually like the Spock is actually an ancient Jewish sign. I don't know if you've ever.
No, I remember it.
Oh, you didn't know. So it's like, sorry, Karyna's fun fact of the day. So when I was on a random walking tour in Prague, we had this awesome tour guide who was also like a philosophy, PG in philosophy. I mean, it was the most fantastic experience having a walking tour. That guy was brilliant, and so he brought us to the Jewish cemetery, and everywhere on the tombs you could see the sign. And he was like, well, actually, the Spock sign came via this actor who was starring in the Star Trek movie, the first edition. And he was like an Ashkenazi Jew. So he came from, I don't know, former Soviet Union, perhaps even former Soviet Ukraine. I don't know. And then he introduced this as a live long and prosper or whatever. But this is actually like is an ancient Jewish sign, which I might be also misrepresenting it. Maybe you have to cross your fingers or something. But this was really cool for me to learn, and then that's I'm also enchanted by Jewish cemeteries because indeed they are the white stone. Yeah. We'll definitely have one thing in common. Do you like Jewish cemeteries? Oh, I do. What are we friends? Yeah, but that's also again to be found in the western part of Ukraine, right?
Yes and no, right? Because we would also travel quite a bit in the central part, right? And also would go south, and I remember there was also a Jewish cemetery on the way to Bilhorod, which is not, I mean, I guess relatively speaking it's west, right? But in Ukrainian context, it's very much south. Like it then borders.
Bilhorod is in Bilhorod, the one that's temporary Russia, but soon to be Ukraine, or okay, Bilhorod Dnistrovsky. Okay, yeah.
And it was also such a fun experience. There's also, So the cuisine there is very rich, right? Because it's quite far down south, so a lot of things grow there, and it's also a melting pot for a lot of cultures. I think there is a YouTube video on. I'll have to link it. I don't remember the title anymore. It's by the two dudes, Ptushkin and Katsurin. Yiża Bilhoroda, I suppose. I'll try to link it afterwards.
Yeah, at the very least to me, now I'm very curious. I'll not watch when hungry though, because that's like a recipe for a disaster.
Yeah. I think that was really sweet. What about you? What's your fondest memory of your travels?
Whew. Well, I was kind of discovering Lviv and its culture and like its differentness, but also still like being as Ukrainian as things can get. I think it's like Lviv is so many things. Due to the fact that that's like the closest major city to the Ukrainian-Polish border, which I can easily reach now in these realities where there's no plane travel to Ukraine. So I've been meeting up there with my family, and I've been really discovering kind of like just how, how interesting and rich its history is. also from the point of view that, um, you know, if you think about Ukraine, and definitely don't want to contribute to any kind of narrative of like East versus West in Ukraine or anything like that, but it's more of a actually the opposite situation, that Ukrainians had this strong sense of statehood despite being parts of different empires, which we just will not go into this context for the purposes of time in this podcast, but we'll definitely get back to this. That Lviv used to be and Ternopil, Lviv used to be part of a completely different empire, which is the Austria-Hungary, and places like Kyiv, Kropyvnytsky, Dnipro used to be part of the Russian Empire, and still in 1918, which is like a very important year for the Ukrainian statehood, the Ukrainians from two different empires just kind of said, well, screw you empires, we're going to be one nation. And then they just kind of, shook hands and decided to be one, right? And that is what we are referring to the day of the formation of the Ukrainian state under the auspices of the Western Ukrainian what is it, People Republic, and the Ukrainian People Republic. And if you think about it, it was all in the context of when similar things were happening in Europe. But I was just thinking, this place feels like, you're walking around and it looks a little bit like Vienna, but it's not Vienna. It's not Krakow or Krakow. It's not all those different things. It is Ukraine, and this has been like a beating heart of the Ukrainian nation for so many years. And that's what I really like, that city, it really stayed a lot of different things, but first and foremost, it had a lot of this Ukrainian soul in it. But I think, if I think about the unexpected places that I've kind of been to, and things that I was maybe also shocked to an extent, I remember I have distinct memories of going to Crimea for the first time as a child in 2005, I believe, and just seeing all this Crimean Tatar architecture, which is, I just felt like I went into a different country. We drove to Crimea for 8 hours, which felt like forever at that age. And then I was just like, whoa, it's it's and there's all this culture that's influenced by the Turkish conquest, but also Crimean Tatar own, right? Because that's also very important to distinguish as a. And I remember just seeing mosques, and I was like, whoa, I've never realized that this is in the same country as us. And I think, with the Crimea is the same unfortunate story that we are going through with all the rest of the occupied territories, that the shell might still be there, right? The mosques might still be there, but people who would go into those mosques to worship, they are persecuted. And so it's almost like what you were referring as the uncanny valley, that it might look and sound the same, but it is a zombie that is just basically not the same. And I get very sad about this really on the regular basis, because I also have recurring dreams about just going to Crimea and just kind of enjoying myself. And I'm just like, whoa, this looks just like when I went there for the last time 11 years ago in 2013. And then I wake up and I'm always sad. And I know that the day is coming when we will all get to see Crimea. We'll get to see Luhansk. I don't know what that will be like, but I know that it will come sooner rather than later.
There's the two songs that I think play exactly on this feeling. One of them is by, I think it was released under the band's name Krykitka, Yalta. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Not yet, but it's now on my to-do list.
And there's also, I'm not sure whether the name was Luhansk, but it's by Vril. It's also quite good. I have mixed feelings about them, right? Because on one hand, they describe something very dear to me, with the idea of coming back, the idea of return. And at the same time, they frame it very much in the songs. They have perhaps a slight militaristic ring to them, right? So where it's like, okay, we're gonna go there, we're gonna get them back, we're gonna sort of cover the distances from here and there with tanks. Which I think is a very legit feeling, right? But something that just I keep thinking of again and again and again while that is not the image that I immediately associate, right, with neither. My image of Luhansk is definitely not militarized in any way, right? And the idea of coming back there,
in a tank, on a tank.
It's kind of bizarre. I mean, I understand that the occupation doesn't happen by just waltzing in there, and military force sort of would be the one that does the job here. At the same time, this is not the image that I have, and I still have to marry the two together somehow. Anyway, I guess this is a good point to wrap up.
I think it's a good point to wrap up, to mention that folks should like our content, comment on the content, but only good things, obviously. And please just subscribe. We are gonna bring you more content in the future. And now we're gonna go off the record, and I'm gonna sing you the anthem of Luhansk, because it's actually, unfortunately, in Russian. So I am not going to speak this language anywhere on the record, but I can sing you the Kryvyi Rih one.
Let's do the Kryvyi Rih, and we'll hear the last one after.
Okay, so this moment in time is gonna go.
Do you gonna clap me like?
It's gonna go down in history as ultimate cringe, but I'll still try. So
the sweetest thing ever.
Kryvyi Rih моє місто, це тобі моя пісня, хай летить вона в небо високе твоє. Ти перлина держави, її гордість і слава. Я вклоняюся долі, що ти в мене є.
It's beautiful. I love it.
Let's not cry. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Hopefully this episode encourages you to just go there and explore a little bit. Maybe read up just on Ukrainian geography, because there's so much we didn't cover. We didn't cover Crimean mountains. We didn't cover the forests. We didn't cover the rivers. And some things you might have seen, like the foresty tunnel, right? That appears in a lot of pictures, but there are beautiful things out there. So
we'd go 30 hours straight if we were to mention all the beautiful things and sing all the anthems. All right.
Thank you so much for listening. Have a good one.
Calling.